Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I am your host, Mary Zarnecki, and today I am thrilled to introduce you to my guest expert, Debbie Kestin Schildkraut. She is a VP of B2B Marketing at the ANA, which is the Association of National Advertisers. And today we're going to be digging into an exciting topic, which is how B2B teams and leaders can more effectively use story and storytelling to really communicate the value and full impact of what they do beyond just talking about the technology itself. So thank you so much for being here, Debbie. Welcome to the Sticky Note Marketing Show.
Thanks, Mary. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, I know some people listening to this episode or watching us on YouTube may be familiar with you, but just for those who are meeting you for the first time, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick intro to what it is you do now at the ANA and how you ended up in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a VP of B2B marketing, as I think you said. I've been here for a little over a year and a half. And at the NA, we're here to really empower B2B marketers to make sure that they are staying on top of all the industry changes, cross-industry changes, technologies, anything that helps them to serve their customers better. We'll look after account-based marketing, channel marketing, customer experience, a variety of areas through thought leadership, conferences, webinars, committee meetings, anything that helps people to really come together, share, and learn from one another and learn from anything that we could pull together, being a neutral kind of industry resource for all of them. And I got into the ANA because I was at IBM for over 25 years in a variety of global B2B marketing roles. And I worked with the ANA. I was on one of their digital and social marketing committees. I was a judge for one of their awards programs. So for me, it was just a very natural place to go. I love teaching, and I think that's part of a core aspect of kind of what we do. So
Yeah.
how I'm here.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. And I think a lot of us actually that, because obviously I'm a faculty member at the ANA and I used to take courses when I was at Johnson and Johnson. I think a
Yeah.
lot of us had both sides of the table experience before we actually start engaging.
Yes, I think so.
Now, I know one of the things I wanted to chat with you about was your experience in working with teams who have fairly complex and complicated technologies that they're bringing to market, but wanted to dig into some of the things that you're seeing working now and something that people can really dig into more, which is using story and really showcasing the power of what the thing can do, right? What the actual technology is capable of by getting into more than just the thing itself. So, talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing now when it comes to B2B leaders that are really embracing this power of storytelling to tell the full impact and showcase what they're able to deliver.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important, especially right now with AI infiltrating into everything. How do you differentiate yourself in terms of what you're offering, especially if it's an AI solution today? And we actually faced this a lot when I was at IBM. The role right before I left was an AI applications and blockchain team. And especially with blockchain, and sometimes we think we were like ahead of the curve with it a little bit. You hear a little bit more about it now. Sometimes you don't hear about it as much because AI is kind of taking over the whole narrative going on right now. But from a B2B perspective, I needed to help not just my customers understand blockchain and what it could do, but even our business partner community, because I've always had a big focus on our business partners, selling our solutions as an extension of our company. What are ways that they can help build their own stories? And when you put it contextually, how technology is making a difference for a company or for anybody, it really helps people to really connect with that technology and start to understand it more, because sometimes people find particularly emerging technologies can feel so overwhelming. And when you give people kind of contextual examples of this is what it did and this is the impact of it, they can really start to get their heads around it a little bit more and connect with it and feel like, wow, I can start to see where this can go.
I like that focus too, because like you said, sometimes just focusing on the thing, the technology, especially emerging technologies, it can feel like incredibly overwhelming, even for people who are part of the decision-making process in a B2B buying situation. I know we laughed before the record button got hit about the fact that sometimes decisions are made by committee.
Yes.
And sometimes there's the engineer, the technologist that needs all of the details, but there may be influencers on the decision that need a different angle. So tell me a little bit about a story that you have or an example that you have where talking not just about the feature set, but more about that impact you mentioned was key to success.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting. So when we were trying to really roll out our blockchain practice, one of the things that I did was set up a program that allowed any partners, whether they were a startup, developer, or in a more established company, to understand the technology and have a sandbox to play with it. We had like kind of cloud platforms where they can go and really experience the technology itself. But one story in particular really had a lot of legs to it. And that one was with a client called Plastic Bank. And they approached us as a startup that basically said, we know we want to use the IBM blockchain and AI applications technology, but we're not 100% able to make it work. Can you work with us and our solution provider? So sure enough, we got together with them. Cognition Foundry was the name of the business partner. They're excellent. They're out there right now, still doing a lot of great impact work. And we literally pulled together some of the IBM garage techie guys and assessed the problem they were trying to solve and then figured out how to go solve it. And you're right, when it comes to the decision makers, you need to make sure that all the technology, the story, the impact, how is it going to work is going to work, right? And so in working with this smaller startup plastic bank, they were even still trying to decide, was IBM the right solution for them? Was it the right kind of technology piece to put into the puzzle to solve the problem? And the problem was around, we have plastic garbage everywhere. We have overuse of plastic bottles. When you want to look at where is the biggest volumes of plastic entering the ocean throughout the world, it's of course not too surprisingly, in the most underserved regions of the world, where you've got communities that are underserved. There's lack of waste management, lack of infrastructure. And so that's where they focus their efforts. And the idea was make the technology simple, right? Because if you're going to be working with people who are not technologists, they're everyday people who we want to collect the garbage, the plastic before it goes to the ocean. They literally wanted to put an app on it could be on a low-end smartphone that was getting donated in this particular case for the pilot area, and have this solution verify that if Joni is going to collect 50 pounds of plastic or 50 kilos of plastic, depending where you live, this month, how do you accurately and authentically track what she's earning? Because that is now a digital coin or digital money that she can now go and cash out for food, fuel, clothing for her or her family. We worked with them on building out that solution and understanding the challenge and making sure that we made it work. And the other piece of that, by the way, is what happens with the plastic when it's collected and once the individuals are tracked and authentically paid with what they've earned, is big companies, big packaged goods companies like SC Johnson, Procter and Gamble will buy the plastic and then they would recycle it, put it back into their manufacturing lines, and then you have the circular economy of how technology has enabled us to actually do something really impactful for these underserved communities and giving them a livelihood, but also in collecting garbage before it enters the ocean. Been hearing about these islands of plastic, right? And then helping all of us have healthier food sources from the ocean, healthier for marine life, and then also just the whole recycling of plastic and these companies wanting to do good, knowing that they have to deliver their product to consumers out there. But if they have a solution that does it more socially, responsibly, and accessibly in those solutions, then they can report back on that and deliver on that. And then we all feel good about buying a product that was recycled and done for good. So this ended up becoming our storyline. It was a little bit of a sample use case that evolved into, we just used our AI and blockchain application solutions for social good. And could we do that in other ways? And I was teamed up with our sales team as a marketing person trying to not only facilitate this, I went a little bit out of my typical job role to facilitate it, but how do you help the sales teams understand when they're talking to all the clients that they could be doing things like this with the technology? So that became a really big narrative that just evolved and evolved. And I can give you more examples
Yeah.
about it. Should I?
No, I think it's so interesting. And especially for the
Yeah,
listeners to this episode, if you're
yeah,
in a B2B role, whether in
yeah,
sales or marketing or innovation or product development, you're probably at some point going to have to interact with stakeholders, either internal or external,
absolutely.
who are
Yes,
going to need to know more than just the details. And they're going to need to have some kind of, like you said, contextual concept of what does this actually do on a bigger scale? How does
right.
it connect to the impact our organization is going to make? And I love that example, that story that you told about the technology, right? The blockchain was able to help with a job that really addressed a specific problem, right? How do we verify? How do we make sure that this coin, this money is being verified and allocated to the right people based on the right performance, based on, and then it has this kind of trickle effect to, in my head, you were thinking, I think about oceans. I'm seeing this like ring of water, right? One thing gets dropped in the water, you get this ring that goes out.
Right.
But it's
Love that.
interesting because, when I'm thinking about the folks that might be listening to this and some of the questions that might be coming up for them, one of which is, okay, but how do I even start telling that story? So whether it's that case or maybe even a different case that you worked on, for someone who's listening to this, who's saying, okay, I get the idea of it, but I'm not even sure how to really start going from talking about my technology to the storytelling part of it. So how do you help people bridge that in the work that you've done?
Yeah, I think it's, of course, first of all, really important from the customer, grounded in the customer. What is it that they need to solve for,
Mhm.
right? What is it that they need? What is their goal? What's their objective? And then you got to make sure it's going to be relevant for them, right? And helping them to make that bridge it for them. So if you've got examples where you can take client case studies, success stories that really can help illustrate but something that's aligned to where they need to go. Because you really don't want to just randomly say, oh, we've got these great stories, but they have nothing really directly to do with what that client wants to do, what that client needs to do. And when you're dealing with the newer technology, sometimes it's harder to find those use cases, but wherever you can to really show the art of the possible as relevantly as you can is really important. And sometimes we just have to get creative in terms of how we do those things. And I think sometimes it's a little bit of interviewing existing customers and saying, why did you pick this technology? What resonated for you? How did we help you succeed with your goals? And why we've got you, how can we help you go further? And sometimes those conversations really evolve into other areas. And that's part of what we did too, because all of a sudden this one use case became relevant for oil and gas. It became relevant during the pandemic for trust and transparency on supply chain management. It became relevant for tracking oil and gas. It became relevant for diamonds, right? Also, the diamond business was had to do with plastic. Diamonds are a very precious, obviously, item. So when you are transporting, think about what example I give is if you think about the core kind of raw materials. Antwerp is known for the diamond industry, right? And I live in New York, right? New York City is known for its diamond district. And you have to think about how does that raw material get from A to B to C to Z, right? In a safe, secure way so that it's not swapped out for a fake or an imitation. So it's just another way that the technology is mutable, transparent to everybody that needs to see, trackable all along the way. So when you start to think about what's the problem the client needs to be solving for, and even if you could take these other areas, these other industries where, that trackability becomes relevant, you can start to illustrate ways that you can get that client to get their problem solved through the technology.
Yeah.
And if we do a better job of illustrating those for people, it really just starts to click because the more stories and the more use cases and applications you can bring together, it becomes almost like a portfolio of solutions, right? That people can start to connect with because the more of those you have, the more things people can be like, oh yeah, that's relevant for me. Whether it's in their personal life or their business life, it just starts to like diamonds. A lot of us can get excited about that.
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't mind talking about those more. But you bring up something really interesting about, first of all, asking the questions, right? So as you're starting to think about, okay, what stories do I need to tell? How do I need to position this so it's more audience centric? It's being positioned in light of the value to my customer,
Yeah,
as opposed to just talking about us, the brand, the technology, what we can
right.
do and what we can deliver. So I think for those of you listening and watching, hopefully you have your sticky notes out, writing notes down here. But just first taking the pause and actually asking your existing customers, if you have existing customers, what was the tipping point for you? What was the yes for you? What was that aha moment where you're like, oh, this is the right solution for us? But even for those founders or startups that are still trying to get the flywheel going and get those first great customer relationships going, asking questions of the potential customers that you're engaging to really very clearly get a handle on how they articulate that problem, I think is really something important about what you just said, is that before we start talking about what we do with our technology or what our technology can do, it's almost more important to then say, but what do you actually need done? And then let's take that lens, and that's how we're going to talk about this, as opposed to starting from the other direction and saying, okay, this is what our technology does.
Exactly. I think a lot of companies fall into that trap of really being like, we have this great solution, it's better than everybody else's, and this is what it can do for you. But yes, it's better to dial it back first and really just make it customer centric, customer grounded.
Yeah.
Start with the customer. And even if it's a potential customer, how is your technology solutions work? If it's technology, right? I'm using that as an example because I've grown up more in tech, but how are things working for you today? What could be better? What's your aspirations? Where do you want your business to go? What do you wish you could do that you can't do now? Start to ask those, art of the possible questions. And it sounds maybe a little bit hokey when you first hear it, but it, especially if you're trying to really just listen to the customer, then you could really more relevantly have that conversation. And as you said, the buying group has all these different players that come into play. And we're getting more behind that, understanding the different personas of all the different people. Like a lot of times we'll think, yeah, you go to the CTO, they're buying the technology, so they're going to make the decision. But it's not that simple. Even like me sitting in IBM as a marketer, I wanted to use a particular marketing agency. I had to go through that whole procurement approval process. Yes, I was the leader in the initiative and I wanted to spend my budget a certain way. Bigger companies in particular have a process, and I had to be able to validate to my procurement team. And my procurement team was predisposed, just like anybody is,
Yeah.
to certain other agencies and companies. And so I had to convince them even why this particular agency who had won me over had a certain expertise or unique capability to help me achieve my goals of what I wanted to do with my particular objectives. You could take it in almost any industry context, but you have to really understand the information that's relevant for those different decision makers and not just tell the same flat story. It's got to be, and if you are going to do your storytelling and put those stories and case studies together, you might have to tweak them a little bit depending on who you're talking to. It's fascinating. And sometimes salespeople sometimes get it before the marketing people in terms of knowing who they have to go speak with. Like I've met some salespeople who are like, oh yeah, I knew I had to go meet with that procurement person almost right away. But it's just, us just taking a step back from a B2B marketing perspective and really just thinking again, like a little bit more deeply, a little bit more thoughtfully, and really dialing it back to the customer first. So you make sure that you're going at it the right way as opposed to a generic way.
Yeah. No, it's a good point too about the sales and marketing partnership, right? And that sometimes the sales, if it's a salesperson that's having real conversations with real humans, they're going to see the body language, the facial reactions, the kind of feedback they're getting from the messages they're putting out there pretty fast. Sometimes I feel like as marketers, we're arm's length, we're looking at digital body language, but we're not actually seeing that face-to-face interaction where we get that immediate feedback. When you
Yeah, and
go ahead. Yeah.
And I was going to say, and I love to talk about sales and marketing alignment a lot because some organizations are very challenged with it. But, I grew up in a specialty area called channel marketing. And the first thing I did was align with the sales team. Like I became like they're attached to the hip pretty much with them because you need sales and marketing people. You need to be friends. You need to be connected. You are working towards the same goal. And like you said, the salespeople are the front line. And if you're working with a business partner or a solution provider channel, they're your front line too. So you need to be talking to them as well. And they need to give you that feedback of what the clients are saying so that way you can hone your marketing messages appropriately. So that feedback loop is so important. So as marketers, we might have a greater, deeper understanding of market insights because we're always looking bigger, broader, better. What are the best channels of communication, best channels of marketing to take to reach our target audiences or personas that we're going after. But the salespeople are going to also we're going to be able to learn from each other because they're going to have that firsthand experience. And so as long as you've got a sharing feedback loop, or why is this stock? Is there something marketing could put together from a sales enablement briefing document or a customer success story or whatever it might be to help that salesperson be more successful because we're all marching towards the same goals for the company. So it's really important.
No, that alignment is essential. And I think it determines the success for so many businesses today, especially at the startup phase when you're starting to just gain traction in certain
Yes.
markets, it even if there's any cracks in that communication channel, right, between sales and marketing, it becomes very evident very quickly. So I'm curious from your perspective, either organizations, brands, teams that you're inspired by now or that you've been even worked with in the past that really inspired you, that you see doing this really well, that they're embracing the storytelling, they're embracing the ability to share like you did with the plastic bank, the
Wow.
bigger story.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you've seen recently that's inspired you? Because I know obviously at the ANA, I've been part of the teams doing the judging, and I know we have awards that we give out. So I don't know if there's any that have inspired you in the past couple of years.
Oh gosh. I don't want to have any favorite children or anything like
I know,
that.
exactly. But just people that you see doing this
Yeah.
well.
ServiceNow is one of the companies that come to mind right away. They had a really fun spot this past year with a known kind of celebrity figure. And what was fun about it wasn't so much that you have an influencer or a known person, but that as you watch the commercial, they were really taking you through different use cases that their technology touches. So when you think about an organization, I think ServiceNow originally people maybe align them to like the ticketing system, and they do so much more right now. Leaders and agentic AI in particular, and they just had some really just a fun ways of showcasing the impact and touch that if their technology wasn't there, certain things wouldn't happen and certain things would go really awry. They found a really like fun and humorous way to do it. So they're one of the ones that definitely pop into my mind in particular.
That's a great case study. And
Yeah.
it's a great example too, because a lot of organizations pop in or have that moment of their growth, right? They
Yeah.
become really well known for one thing, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that gets to a certain level of success. But then if they start adding different services or different capabilities, different technologies, all of a sudden you have to somehow not not get rid of that history that you've built, but how do I then expand people's view of, oh, you actually do the
Other
thing,
things. Yeah.
but
It was
yet
really
not
clever.
confuse the customer. You never want to.
We still do that, but we do so much more now. Much more holistic solutioning. Yeah. So
Yeah. How do you embrace the, what is it, the improv? Yes, and we
yes,
do.
and that's right. Like IBM certainly did more than typewriters for a long time. So more than
Yeah.
punch cards. Or, so,
No, definitely. As we're getting to the end of our episode here, I'm just curious if there are folks who are listening to this episode and want to dig in more, are there any new initiatives or things that you've got coming up in what you're doing at the ANA that you want to share, things that are going to be coming up, events, initiatives, thought leadership, anything you've got that you're working on?
yeah, thank you. So first of all, we have our Masters of Marketing flagship conference. It's the third week of October. It's in Orlando, Florida. It is an amazing conference. It hits on B2C as well as B2B. We have always top-notch speakers, various big brands, smaller brands, a lot of work sessions, ways to just really learn so many things and be so inspired. It's the week of October 20th, I believe, in Orlando, Masters of Marketing. So go to ana.net and just kind of look at our conferences and you'll see it right there. It's probably even on our masthead right now, I think, one of the floating mastheads. And then from a B2B perspective, we just launched a joint thought leadership initiative around brand to demand. And that one explores that balance of brand marketing and brand identity and performance marketing. So a lot of times we're so results oriented in B2B, trying to get those sales, those leads to be qualified leads to sales, that we have to remember to also balance it with a good amount of branding. And a lot of B2B budgets are really small, and there's a lot of pressure to show results. So this thought leadership paper that's on our website now really helps you to dig into finding that right balance of brand and demand marketing together. So that's at ana.net/B2B. We also just did an AI adathon that I ran at our B2B Masters of B2B marketing event. And that really showed the art of the possible about how an ad campaign can be created from creative brief to on air. We did it for 2 clients in 72 hours, which is insane. Now, it's not to say that everybody should just give up on everything else and just use these AI tools and go to market in 72 hours, because that would be crazy. But we showed that it could be done. We brought together some really smart companies, both clients and solution providers, and just showed the art of the possible and how you can inform the brief. And it's just something to think, there's aspects to consider. So I'll be deconstructing that a little bit because we implemented it. It was exciting. It got a lot of awareness and press, but I'm going to be helping people navigate beyond that now and say, here's some best practices. Here's things that we learned from that you can consider going forward. And we also have some B2B data papers that we've just come out with in terms of how to ensure your data excellence. Data is so critical. Data and automation is so critical to running companies effectively. So we've got some work around that we're sharing as well. And there's some other work coming out soon too. So I don't think I could talk about them just yet, but there's always a lot of things in the works right now. We're keeping pretty busy.
Fantastic. And for those of you guys watching and listening, we'll include those links here in the show notes so that you can access all of those resources as well.
Excellent. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Debbie, so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us on the Sticky Note Marketing Show today. Thank you for being part of this.
No, thank you for having me. And if anybody has more questions, they should just reach out and we're happy to expand upon it some more.
So if you'd like to get in touch with Debbie, we'll include her best contact information with the show notes. So please definitely reach out. Any light bulbs that went off, any questions, please drop those here in the chat. We'd love to hear what you took away from today's episode. If you found this valuable, share it, like it, subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming guest experts. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. Cheers.
Thanks.